I'm going to show you how to repair buttons in this Logitech Harmony One Remote. Now, most of my button repair kits are for rubber buttons, and make something like this where you install on the phone and the old rubber buttons push down on the membrane keypad and fix the buttons. I also sell individual kit for individual buttons. But this remote here uses metal snap domes. I do have metal snap domes if you need some. So the ButtonWorks kit will not work with metal snap domes. But I've had a lot of people asking about this remote, so I wanted to make a video. It is pretty tricky. I got this remote with a defective screen, or just a spot on the screen. And I did break the touch screen taking it apart. So this is a more tricky remote to take apart and repair than the other Logitech remotes I've dealt with. And I know people want to do it, so let's get into it. So first you take the battery cover off and you get that battery out. Now they have two visible screws right here, and one was missing. But there's one there and one there. There's also two hidden ones under this sticker with the part number on it. So you got to peel up the corners, or you could take the whole thing off. I just peel up the corners like that, and then you can get to the screw. However, this is broken, so I don't need to take them off. But, so there'd be two screws there that you can see, and two underneath that. Once you take those out, there is this like a back plate here, which is it's decorative, or it's covering up more screws basically, and it's held down by a bunch of snaps that are hidden, and then there's some sticky adhesive right here at the bottom of the remote. And I've already taken this apart, so I don't need to do it, but you'd probably want to heat this up with a hairdryer, get it nice and warm, and that'll loosen up the adhesive. It'll make it easier to come apart. And you can use a pry tool to get under there, right? And then I used a plastic card, and that helped separate the adhesive, which is up here. So you get it in there a little bit, and it just keeps the adhesive from sticking back together once you start prying it apart. Yeah, this doesn't work that great. I like my little metal screwdriver or a flat pry tool versus this. And okay, so then once I've got the adhesive kind of separated, and you just carefully slide this around like that, and I'm loosening up the snaps. Yeah. And I'm not prying or anything, I'm just sliding this along, right? And then, okay, grab that, put some pressure, oh yeah, it comes right off. So really after you get this tape removed, the snaps come off. I've taken this apart a couple times and they're still fine. And if you did break some of these, I mean obviously you can just put some more. I wouldn't use glue, I would use adhesive. And you could put more adhesive on there to hold it on if the snaps did break. So once you have this off, there's another two screws here, one here and here, and then there's one up at the top part of the remote. So we'll take these off. Now all of these screws are the same so far. There's some inside the remote that are different. You're going to want to hold separately so you don't get them mixed up. So in total, you should have 4, 5, 6, 7 screws. I haven't taken 2 off here because those were broken. And okay, so now we got all those screws out. And there's like these slots down here under the battery cover where you can put in a pry tool, and it'll snap off. Once it starts to come off, this one came off pretty easy, but I've taken it apart a couple times. You might need to slide something down there. It could be the plastic card or whatever, or a plastic pry tool is better to keep from marring up your plastic. But if you have trouble, I didn't have any, I didn't have to pry. Again, you don't want to pry, you just want to slide these things along. Okay, so that all came off. And that's it there. Now it starts to get a little trickier. There's 2 screws down at the bottom of the remote, and these are a different size. So I'm going to put them somewhere else to not get them mixed up. They're pretty close, but just a little bit shorter. So now here's where I messed up the first time. I just sort of tried to take this circuit board out. There's a cable right here, and that's for the touchscreen. I tried to take this out and just sort of fold it over like a book, but it got stuck up here, and it just had a little trouble. And when I finally did it, I guess I pulled a little too much. It's very fragile, and it ripped, and now the touchscreen won't work anymore. So before you go any further, you want to remove this. This one had a little piece of tape kind of keeping this from unplugging. So I'm going to remove that. I'll just stick it somewhere up there and see if I can get in this. It's a very tiny plug, and this connector is like a hinge, it's got a little lever. So you just go under there with some small pry tool and very gently pick at it up, and it flips up like a hinge, and then this will come right out like that. And now we can take the circuit board off. And every single time I've done this one, it's gotten stuck up here in this corner, and I just very gently just sort of put in a little something and just twist it a little bit to help it out. So there we go. Now I've got the circuit board and the buttons, the snap dome buttons and the keypad. And there's this one, the power button's kind of annoying. That falls out all the time. It's got 2 little holes. When you put it back in, it goes, the 2 little holes go in the clips, and it'll go side. It's sort of this extra little lip sticking out towards the center of the remote. But that's just going to fall out again, so I'm going to take it out. If you do take the keypad apart, like this is a light pipe, it helps bounce the backlight around. And then we have the rubber button tops, and these are just, you know, cosmetic. There's no electronics in that. Little tiny bumps go through the holes in here and push down on the metal snap domes. So metal snap domes are a lot better than rubber keypad buttons, but they still do fail after a while. They build up oxidization, and just the tiniest amount of dirt or oxidization in there can start to make them act up and get very frustrating. Now again, this one came off pretty easy, but again, you might want to heat this with a hair dryer the first time. But it comes off. This is all the snap dome layer, and we've got all those domes in there. Now I replaced one just to test it out, and I replaced this up one here with one of these. So normally you can clean these. You can clean the circuit board with isopropyl alcohol. I would use 91%, not the 70 or 50% you can find, but the 90%. And just dampen a Q-tip and clean those gold contacts. They look fine, but they still can have some oxidization on there. And also these look great, but you might have a little coloration, a darkening in there, and or worse, if you have an old drink spill or something, these could be corroded. Now if they are corroded, you're going to want to replace them. And I have these little stickers with the same size snap dome, and all you need to do is say you know, your volume or whatever doesn't work well. You can pick that off, the button off that you don't want anymore, right, and set that aside. And you might want some tweezers for this to help put these down. These are little stickers, and you just pick off one of the little dome stickers, and these are 5mm. So I have them. I have 4mm and 5mm in some different shapes, but these are just round 5mm. So now you know which button you just removed. You can kind of figure out where it is. and I did that one right there. So I'm going to take this and put it over like that. And like, if you don't do perfect, like that's good enough. But if you did get it out, obviously you can just pick this up and put it down. We don't need to stick this down really well. It's just to hold it in place for reassembly. So adhesive isn't really important. I'm going to just put this original button pad right over it. Also, yeah, before I get any further, I use a chemical called Deoxit, and Deoxit Gold is good for this one. Snap domes. You can have a red one, which is DL100. It's called just Deoxit. But I have had some problems with the red Deoxit building up reacting with copper, and it builds up like a little green film over months or years and makes the button fail again. And I've had much better luck with the gold Deoxit for this. Plus, these aren't dirty. The red Deoxit's really for something that's visibly corroded, and usually this stuff is not visibly corroded, so the gold is much better. And if you wanted to, you can just dab a little on there. Like this bottle I've been using for like probably 6 months, and I've only gotten halfway, not even halfway through it. I've done hundreds of these. It's very, very tiny amount. You know, just one dip, I could probably do all these buttons by just keep going over them. And then also, even more important, if any buttons that are acting up for you, I would just kind of get a little Deoxit on there. You know, just try to get it smoothly over the whole thing. It's very, very thin, light coating. You don't want it really built up in there. Wouldn't really hurt it, but there's no sense in having like liquid in there for a long period of time. Okay. And then to put the metal snap dome layer back on, there's 4 holes there to line up. So I'm going to just hold it like this and then start with the top and look at these holes, and then I get it lined up, and then I'm going to grab that and kind of hold it in place, and then make sure the other side goes down. That looks good enough. And this isn't super sticky, but you just touch it a little bit, and that should keep it in place for when you reassemble it. Now this light pipe can be put upside down, and you don't want to do that. It'll mess things up. So just to simplify things, if you put it down, right, this is correct, and I put it down, and it's like, it locks in place, like I can't wiggle it. If it was upside down, and I put it down, it really doesn't lock in place. It can slide around. So that's how you know it's in the right place. However, you can't put it back together this way. You have to put it on the keypad side. So once I know that that's correct, I'm going to pick it up and flip it over and put it down on top of the rubber keypad. Okay, and now I'm going to put this rubber power button back in. And again, if your power button is bad, you have to do it by itself up here, and that's a different shape. Hopefully you can clean it with Deoxit, because it's got it's not fully round. It's got the edges are cut off. It's more of a rectangle than a circle. So I don't have a button specifically for that, and the round ones I think are going to be too big. Obviously they would have used the same one. So hopefully you won't have to replace that one ever. You can just clean it with Deoxit. And, okay, so now there's dust on the screen. You can kind of like lightly brush it off. If you have a can of compressed air, you can blow it off. Or you might want to clean that off too. Okay. And to put this back together, now I'm just going to flip this over. There we go. And kind of wiggle it around so it all falls in place. And then we need to plug in the touch screen again, and that little hinge door fell down, so I'm going to just gently flip it up and put this in there. Again, tweezers might help you out here. You want to make sure it's all the way inserted and not just resting on the side, so you can kind of see where it used to plug in. And I just want to make sure it's actually slid in there, and then just flip that door down, click, it snaps, held in place. I'm going to put that tape back on. And then just need to put it back together now. So you got the two smaller screws down at the bottom. I marked them when I was taking it apart with a black Sharpie. I wasn't sure how many other ones, there might have been some underneath this, but there aren't. So it's fairly simple, straightforward. And then we got the back. You just put it on there and snap it like that. And you got the two screws, well, the one screw up at the top, the two screws here. I'm not going to bother with that right now. When you're done with that, you can just put this back on and snap it down. Now, the adhesive is a little sticky, but it's really not necessary if your adhesive is gone. If you've got all those snaps still in place, I mean, what's going to happen? I don't know why they put glue on there. End snaps. And then we got the four screws at the bottom, the two you can see, the two underneath the flap. It's got the model number on it. And that's it. Put the battery back in. Now I broke my touchscreen, as I said, figuring out how to take this apart the first time. So I'm not sure, I can't hit OK at this point. I can hit buttons. It'll wake the screen up so I know the buttons are working. The power one just blinks the whole screen there, but yeah, that should do it. Now Deoxit will do a great job cleaning these buttons, and then right away you should notice, like say the volume wasn't working good, right away it should work much better. But every time you push that in the neck while that Deoxit is still in there, it'll help clean it up. Wherever it's touching, and friction will just clean the oxidization off the button. So you could just sit there and hit the button a bunch of times and it should work great. And if you do have major trouble or you need any of these, this is a 5mm snap dome button, and that's all you need, however many you need if you wanted to replace the channel and volume or the up and down, left, right, OK, or whatever. You could get a few of these.